Boys, what is going on? I feel like it's been a while since the Ryi Report, even though there really hasn't been that long. It's just the meta. It don't be shifting too much, and with the most recent ban list, we thought it would shift up even more. It turns out, not really. we're pretty much in the same meta that we were in before. Just Harpy ladies are a little bit weaker since they can't play TTH, and they have that clear-cut weakness with the Swallow's Nest being nerfed, and we'll talk about that as we kind of get into all the tiers. We'll talk about them individually. Just a warning, this meta is extremely weak, so the fine line between tier 3 and rogue tier is very, very, very thin. So instead of having a rogue tier category this week, I instead put question mark, question mark, question mark, which is just going to be me pretty much telling you about my opinions on decks that could potentially be good or potentially be bad, depending on how the meta shapes up. Anything that's not in here that you would think is in here, that's usually in here, like TGs, Noble Knights, all those magnets, all the like tier 3/rogue decks that were here in the past. This meta is so weak that they could easily win a tournament any given week. We just had Lunalights win a tournament not too long ago. So, but I personally believe they're not going to be decks that are noteworthy to really talk about, because they're only going to win like that one tournament a week. So they might hit top 5, but probably only 4th or 5th place and then drop off. Or they'll just not get enough points. They'll just win a tournament but not get enough points just because the meta is so weak. They can snag a win here and there. It doesn't really mean anything at the end of the day for the most part. So, getting into it, Harpy Lady, it is still the best deck by far. Most entered, most top, most wins in a week of tournaments. However, it is considerably weaker than it used to be. The 30 card and the 20 card variant is still extremely really good. But it has very clear defined weaknesses. It definitely feels a lot more. It's kind of like Noble Knights, where if you interrupt the first summon, or Karakur, you interrupt the first summon, they pretty much fold. It's pretty much like that, except their normal summon gets to pop one of your back row. So you got to be careful of what back row you have available that might get popped. That's really the only thing you gotta really worry about with Harpy Lady. But because of that, the tier 2, which is more interesting, Water XCs. Some people might be like, "Oh, right, Water XCs has been doing so well. There's been 2 power rankings. They were first in the first one, and second in the second one. Why shouldn't they be tier 1 as well?" I do think there's 2 things when it comes to Water XCs and the Harpy matchup, right? One is the Floodgates, right? Poisonous Wind, and Harpies is the deck that can deal with those Floodgates easiest because of Harpy's Hunting Ground. But one thing that's gone an advantage for our good old water poppers here is now, because Harpy is not, they don't play as many Swallow's Nests, they only play the one, if they even play the one. Some of them have even dropped the one and tried to go for double elegant for more OTK power. Because Swallows isn't as prevalent in our game, if an Abyss Dweller goes in, and if they go first and they activate their pop on turn 1, or turn 2 rather, when it's Harpy's turn, and they interrupt that first initial summon, it's usually curtains for Harpy ladies at that point. There usually isn't too much beyond that for them to do. If it's successful, obviously, if it gets Swallow's Nest, if they happen to open their one of Swallow's Nest, they still are able to, sneak away with the dub. But that's pretty much the interaction that we have in our metagame. And then at tier 3, we have Destiny Hero, who week 1 fell off the power rankings, but week 3 found a place again in the power rankings, just being kind of like that nice gateway auto duel deck, being able to snipe back row with MST, OTK people with the Mask Hero engine. It's just generic staples, the spam deck, right? All these decks, are running things like Drowning, Mirror Force, Book of Moons, stuff like that, in a hopes to get ahead of the metagame for the most part. And you might be saying, "Oh, well, there's only 3 or 2 decks on the tier list. There's all these decks can win." Yes, these are the meta-defining decks. So if you can find a rogue strategy that beats these decks, you are in the clear. This meta is extremely weak. If you can beat these 3 decks, you are solid for tournament play, for the most part. There are 2 things to talk about. Abyss actors still have a high play rate for how much their success rate is. Their success rate's actually really bad. And we're not even talking about power rankings, just individual tournament to tournament. They are struggling to top. And even though they did win a tournament last week and were able to get into the top 5 last week, I don't really have that much faith in them repeating that over and over, because that was before the word was out, right? Harpies are back. And with Harpies being back, being able to pop those pendulum scales in the back row, I think it's curtains for Abyss Actors. I don't think they're going to be able to kind of sneak their way in, if you will. So I think ultimately Abyss Actors will end up being a failed archetype. And it's a damn shame, because it was so close to being that first relevant pendulum deck, but I just don't think it's going to be able to transition after what we've seen with Harpies coming back. But one nice surprise has been Blue Eyes White Dragon, and to a degree Lunalight as well. We can talk about Lunalight as well. I probably should have put Lunalight on here, but pretend this Blue Eyes is also a Lunalight card, because we're going to talk about both right now. With the death of Melodious, and do not get me wrong, Melodious is essentially bye-bye at this point. No one really plays the deck anymore, and if they do play it, they don't really do very well. It is what it is, right? Melodious is a non-factor in this meta. It's definitely one of those rogue tier decks. Its worst matchup was the Harpies. They're back, and at the end of the day, you know, they even, like when Harpies were at full power and they were in the metagame, Melodious was struggling to actually get past that 3rd place spot. So they're back. They still suck against them, and they don't want to do it anymore. They're like, I'm done. It doesn't also help that there's, you know, things like Abyss Actor, which is another rogue tier deck, can just like set a sassy rookie and then you lose to it, right? And that's kind of always been Melodious's downfall, losing to things like Noble Knights, Desktops. These are all losing matchups for Melodious. It doesn't matter how good you are of a player. There's not much you can do against, you know, like when the top players are getting defeated by Deskbots, it's, you know, either the top players suck or the deck sucks, you know? So it's one or the other. And unless you want me to start saying players are bad, you gotta blame the deck at the end of the day. But because Melodious is pretty much dead, Blue Eyes White Dragon, Lunalight, decks like the decks that deck was pushing out of the metagame have a chance to come back in now. And I guess Thunder Dragons too, but Thunder Dragons are nerfed, so I don't believe too much in them. I'd have to see more on them. But Blue Eyes White Dragon, Lunalight, you know, Lunalight already won a tournament. Blue Eyes already won a tournament in the previous week, and they are rogue tier strategies that may even break into meta play if Melodious continues to be a non-factor in the coming weeks, which is what it looks like is going to be happening with our metagame. So definitely keep your eyes on those decks that Melodious was pushing out. They may come back into the metagame. Abyss Actors, though, they'll probably drop. I don't think they'll be doing too much. And yeah, this is pretty much our meta in a nutshell. A lot of people, you know, at the beginning of this meta were like, oh, it's such a diverse meta, I'm so excited. But you guys have to remember, the beginning of a ban list is always diverse as people try different things. That's why these battle phases exist. They're a very good testing ground that you can then take to damage step or battle step and win some serious cash, and then see that your testing, you know, didn't amount to anything, and then switch it up from there, right? And we're definitely at that point where we can have the settled metagame. This is the meta that you're pretty much going to be looking at going into the new box. So whatever new box cards come out, you have to compare them to this. Monster Reborn, you have to compare them to these cards on the list. And that's pretty much all I have to say about the metagame. It's the same as before, just a little bit more focused now that there's a clear weakness to defeating Harpies. A lot of decks are countering Harpies. Harpies are putting in things like Drowning Mirror Force and stuff like that. The meta is shrinking again. Hopefully the new box changes things up. I'm excited for Monster Reborn. Let's see how that fixes things. That's it from me. You guys tell me how you're enjoying this meta down in the comments. Like, comment, subscribe. Subscribe to the channel. That helps us a lot. We're almost at 17K. It'd be awesome if we could hit 17K before the end of the year. I think we can do it in a week's time. I love you guys. Peace out.